Hi, and welcome back to Engine Shop Joe. Last video you saw, we talked about the beginnings of INSITE and ESDN. And today we're going to talk about licensing of INSITE. So when we had the CompuLink, it just worked. And you couldn't get one of those unless you were a distributor or a dealer. It had a serial number and it was registered to you. And it left a little footprint whenever you worked on something that the factory could read if you did something you shouldn't have done. Then when they went to INSITE, INSITE also leaves a what they used to call a PCID, and that was a little tag, and every INSITE program had and has its own PCID, and that is the identifier so that if a truck comes in that's a fleet truck and it's supposed to be set to 65 and it's set to 99 miles an hour and they want to know who did it, we can go in and look at the history and we'll see the PCID of the last truck that worked on that, and that's in the audit trail, by the way. You can all see it, and you can call the factory and say, who is this PCID registered to? And they will tell you who owns the license, what company, what branch for that license. And that's how they know who did what, where, when, and how. Okay, so when INSITE first came out and we were loading it on a PC, we had to put a license in it. So the factory would send us a floppy disk like this, but it was red. And it said INSITE license, and then it had a number after it like 1.0 or 1.1. And they would mail those out once a year because INSITE was a yearly subscription. So every January, the boss would say, hey, here's the new licenses for INSITE. And I would go out and I kept the old disk. I still have them all. And when you put the disk in the computer, you had two choices. You could tell it to run the license off the disk, the floppy, or you could tell it to move the license to the hard drive. And it would move a file to the hard drive and it hid it. So you couldn't find it, and you couldn't see the license on here. If you search for it, it was a hidden file. And so if you left it on the floppy, if I took the floppy out, and I was on day shift and I took the floppy out and put it in my toolbox when I went home, second shift couldn't use INSITE because it was unlicensed. So I used to always move the license to the hard drive. So this is working. Time goes by, and then all of a sudden January comes and we get the discs, and my boss says, go ahead and relicense it. Now, when you relicensed it and you put this in, you could overwrite the license that was on there. I never did that. I used to put the original disc back in, and I would move it from the hard drive back to the floppy. I take it out, I put the new one in, and move it to INSITE. So a lot of guys didn't do that. They just did the license and threw the floppy away. But I was one of those crazies that saved everything, right? So anyway, I get the new licenses. I put them in the machines, and I got the old ones. I put them in. I had a floppy tray in the back of my toolbox. I put them in that. And then somebody goes to use INSITE, and they go, hey, they come over to me and go, dude, you screwed up INSITE. It's not working. So I go over and it says INSITE's not licensed. And so I get the floppy, I put it back in, and it says move license to floppy. So I knew the license was on the hard drive. So I had phone numbers. I go and I call the factory and I go, hey, I just put, and the guy cuts me off and he says, is it version 1.98? And I said, yes. He said, it's corrupted. He said, did you overwrite the old license? I said, no, I saved it. I always save them on the floppy. He goes, thank God. He goes, go in there and take the license back off and put it on the floppy and put the old license back on. And he says, it will continue to work. So we did that. And then he stayed on the phone while I did it to make sure that INSITE was going to continue to function, because the licenses would time out. But what we didn't know is if we left them on there, they would actually run longer than they should. So I said, so is there a problem with the new disc? And I'll never forget, he said, and everybody had to do the license on January 1st, globally back then. He said, today, we shut INSITE down globally. Nobody has a working version of INSITE if they overwrote their old licenses. And he said, we've already got the problem fixed, but he said it's going to take time to get all those thousands of discs mailed out. So that was the first way they licensed. After that, when they ended that, that's when they started the license manager. And the license manager is a standalone program today that controls the licensing of INSITE. And you do everything through the license manager. So on your desktop, you would have an icon that said license manager, and you'd have an icon that said INSITE. And they're two different things. And if you open INSITE and it says not licensed, read only, then you have to close it and you have to open the license manager and figure out what's going on. And down the road, you'll see the license manager. I've got a screenshot of working in it. And so you'll learn how it works and how you use it, okay? So that's my history of the licensing of INSITE. Thanks for joining me on Engine Shop Joe.